Okay, and we are back. I am going to now resume playing the game from the beginning for a second time. Let's do things differently this time.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
I'm just curious if there's another way that I could go here. No. The first time through, it felt like maybe there were more twisting passages than I was actually going through, but it looks like there is literally only one path until I get to the two doors.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Let's resist this narrative.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Perhaps that is what I want. It's interesting that, like, at this first level of resistance, the narrator is giving me an out, right? He's allowing me to sort of take this thing that I wasn't supposed to do and fold it into the narrative again.
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
The employee lounge is colored extremely differently. It's very cool.
Yes, really, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, here you sit looking at these chairs and some paintings. Really worth it.
Definitely worth it. The room is all blue. The white walls have a blue tone.
Stanley's obsession with this room bordered on creepy and reflected poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
Snarky commentary. The pictures on the wall are blue and green, whereas when I go out here, everything is warm.
He'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
I'm going to continue to resist.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't 5 years ago.
Do not jump from the cargo lift while it is in motion. How do I make it in motion? How do I put it in motion so that I can jump from it? I want to resist this narrative as hard as I can.
Look, Stanley, I think
look at this.
We've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you. What? Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. Let me prove that I'm on your side. Give me a chance.
So this is the sort of moment of critical resistance, right? We've resisted past the point that the narrator can enfold our actions into the pre-constructed story. Now he's addressing us directly. Now, actually, our relationship to the narrator changes substantially. It's no longer sort of a traditional narrator relationship. You don't even think about what that relationship means typically. But now there's because of the script, because the narrator has suggested that I think he's trying to do me harm, and that he wants to build trust with me. Now, that frames my relationship with him in a completely different manner.
Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked through the red door.
I'm interested in this new sort of level of relationship that we have with the narrator. I'm going to give him the chance.
You are willing to listen to me. Do you see that I really have wanted you to be happy all this time? The problem is all these choices. The two of us always trying to get somewhere that isn't here. Running and running and running, just the way you're doing right now. Don't you see that it's killing us, Stanley? I want it to stop. We would both be so much happier if we just stopped. And I think I have a solution. Here, let me show you.
This is an interesting sort of non-Euclidean space. I'm pretty sure this door and this door are the same door, or at least I'm meant to perceive them as the same door. I mean, obviously, this could be physically constructed, and I'm sure that it is modeled as a logical space. But it gives the impression, with the way that the light flickered and the fact that the door's open at the same time, the narrator sort of refers to it as a way out. It suggests that this is not like a normal space. Also, the fact that we just like entered a corridor that now loops in with no exit. Game has trained me that it's paying attention to what I do. And specifically, it's noting my resistance to the stated narrative. My expectation now is that if I stand here and wait for long enough, the game will react to that. The game so far has been very, very generous in rewarding my behavior, regardless of what that behavior is. And those rewards come in the form mostly of acknowledgement. The fact that the game recognizes and makes clear that it recognizes that I have done something or failed to do something. This is interesting. I think it's actually not, I don't think it has anything to say. I think it is really just waiting for me to walk through that door, which surprises me a little bit because given that we have already shown a degree of resistance to the narrative, I sort of expect that the game would anticipate the potential for more of that. But since nothing appears to be forthcoming,
What do we want? What are we looking for? Here. Yes. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? If we just stay right here, right in this moment with this place, Stanley, I think I feel happy. I actually feel happy.
this is pretty cool, right? I mean, this looks interesting. Now again, I'm waiting. I'm expecting the game to acknowledge that I have an opportunity to move and I haven't moved. And it does that implicitly by continuing to change my surroundings. Until this loops or something else happens, I'm just going to keep watching. No. So there's a degree of anticipation, right? It's not always clear if I am progressing something, if this is an animation that is continuing, or if I've reached an endpoint where it's just going to loop. Now it's just going to be pink and orange forever. I can appreciate sort of the visual of this, but only for so long. The game is testing me at this point. It's testing my patience. How long am I willing to sort of stand here and see essentially a fireworks show before I get bored and go do something else? And it's sort of layered on top of that. If this was a normal game, then that would not be very long at all. But it has set up this relationship between me and the game where I am very conscious of what I'm doing in compared to what the game wants me to do, right? What the game anticipates I might do. So I'm sort of willing to stand here for a lot longer than I would in a normal game. If this was, Half-Life, I would not stand here for the fireworks show unless the game forced me to. The game doesn't actually need to force me to make me think that maybe something interesting will happen if I stick around for long enough. I've seen this before, though. This is repetitive. So I'm going to assume that we're in a loop, and I'm going to leave.
No, wait. Where are you going?
The suggestion being that this is actually progressing the narrative. There's no way that I could have standed.
Stay away from those stairs. If you hurt yourself, if you die, the game will reset. We'll lose all of this.
Interesting. There's no way that I would have stood there literally forever, which it's suggesting to me this version of conclusion of sort of the the projected narrative conclusion is that I stand there watching the light show forever.
Let me stay here. Don't take this from me.
Interesting. Now I don't actually have a choice here.
Please, Stanley, think about what you're doing.
It's interesting that he wants me to stop, but unlike other points in the game where the game will very, very neatly, with a degree of subtlety that isn't usually very great, suggest what alternatives I have to the sort of, to the projected storyline. And here I don't have any alternatives. The voice wants me to stop. It's protesting, but there's nothing else that I can do. Maybe I could go back, but I doubt it.
Oh, thank God. You lived. You had me worried there for a moment. No. No, what are you doing, Stanley? Please, I'm asking you not to take this away from me. I can't go back to what I was before. If you die, we'll both go back. Why are you doing this?
So I'm enjoying this. I'm deriving actual real pleasure out of this. And why is that? I'm actually really curious. I know that the first version of the game that we played, where we sort of played through the prescribed storyline, was extremely unsatisfying, right? That was a complete narrative from a technically complete standpoint, but it was extremely unsatisfying because it was entirely internal. It was entirely monologued at us, and I didn't participate in a meaningful way in it. The only agency that I had in the game, I essentially sacrificed to progress the story the way that it was being described to me in the correct manner. So I essentially sacrificed all of my agency to get to this, the ending that was theoretically a good ending, but felt incredibly hollow. Now I've been much more playful on this go through. I haven't, because it's possible to play, and maybe we will. It's possible to play this game such that you sacrifice all of your agency to do exactly the wrong thing at every moment. Every time you have a choice, you do what you are told is the incorrect thing, and that is. It'll be really interesting to see how that feels to play, because that represents the exact same sacrifice of agency that doing what you're told is creating. This time, though, we haven't done that. I've made choices in the moment, however I sort of felt at that moment what I wanted to do. I've been playful with the game, with this tension of choices that the game sort of is obviously valuing one over the other. This is the core mechanic, right? The game presents me with two alternatives and tells me one of them is valued in a certain way, and then asks me to choose. And so I've sort of, as I've gone through, I've chosen whichever one I want. This feels much more playful. And this moment where I felt like I was being herded, I felt like I had no opportunity to do anything except climb up these stairs and jump off and die. Then to have that expectation broken and to have it say, well, okay, but you didn't actually die, and now I am going to present you very clearly with a choice. You can go back up again, or you can go back to the fireworks room. That was extremely pleasurable for me. I think part of that is the breaking of expectation, right? That the game has been good so far about telling me where to go and sort of what's going to happen when I go there. And so to have the game all of a sudden be wrong, and wrong in a way that grants me more agency rather than less, was fun. Like, I actually had fun with that.
Stanley, let's go back to the other room. Can you do that for me?
So this feels like I'm...
Oh my God. Is this really how much you dislike my game? That you'll throw yourself from this platform over and over to be rid of it? You were literally willing to kill yourself to keep me from being happy. Am I reading the situation correctly?
This is the first time that I've noticed that he has referred to the game. Breaking the fourth wall entirely. We've sort of gone from a situation where the narrator acts like a narrator as we expect a narrator to act, to addressing the character directly, which is an unusual thing for a narrator to do, but still sort of diegetic. I mean, it's still sort of within the world of the game, but now he's not addressing Stanley. He's addressing me, the player, because he's talking about this as a game. Here we go. I think this is it.
Or maybe you'll just get a kick out of it. I don't know anymore. I just wanted us to get along. But I guess that was too much to ask. It looks like you wanted to make a choice after all. Well, this one is yours.
And now, because I enjoy playing...
Want to stay alive? Or are you just teasing me?
I enjoy playing with that idea of making a choice.
I wanted us to be happy here, Stanley. I really did. I wish I still thought that was possible.
I'm curious if there is an end game here. I feel like most of the paths that you can take through this, paths of various levels of resistance to the narrative, create sort of different branches that we're exploring. But most of them end somewhere. This one is the first one that I've seen that feels like the ending to this branch is that I literally just stand here forever and never stop playing the game and never sort of move again. Which is obviously, not a feasible ending. And the game knows that, so it's really just another it's another push in a direction. It's another corridor. It's interesting. I mean, there's still something interesting about how the narrator was affected emotionally by the entire course of this playthrough, right? He was hurt. He wanted to regain trust. He was happy, or he expressed happiness, and then he expressed fear, and now he's sort of expressing depression. Like, the narrator this time has gone through a huge range of emotions in very much the same way that in the first playthrough, when we did it right, Stanley went through a huge range of emotions, and those emotions still don't mean a lot to me, but they actually mean more to me when the narrator is going through them than they did when Stanley was going through them, because I'm meant to embody Stanley, and so those emotions felt, they ring especially false. But when there's another character, even if there's not really much difference between the narrator saying I feel things and the narrator saying that he feels things, I actually feel a little bit more invested in those feelings because they're happening to somebody else.
Is it over?
That's it.
It's going to restart, isn't it? I'm going back.
I think it's deliberate how that cuts off that way, which is fantastic. That's really, really, really nice sound editing. Okay, I'm gonna speed through.
To go to the meeting room to check on his co-workers. He never functioned well by himself and constantly needed support and guidance from others, so the thought of total solitude was terrifying to him. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
I'm going to try to get further on the right path towards the ending,
There was not a single person here
and then be disruptive at the ending.
Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
There's kind of a, as I gain the trust
Stepping
of the
into his
game,
manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life.
it gives me
What could
different
it
kinds
mean?
of
Stanley
possibilities.
wondered
And
aloud
so
to nobody. He began wildly tearing through papers on the boss's desk, pulling books off the shelf, looking behind paintings, desperate for clues to his situation. But his attention was caught by a keypad behind the
unfortunate
boss's
that I
desk.
can't actually do any of
What could
that.
its purpose be? In fact, this keypad guarded the terrible secret that lay buried below his feet. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
Fantastic. So this is ostensibly a punishment, but it's really a reward because the game has established its reward pattern is acknowledgement of
Feeling
your
soothed
actions.
and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
So anytime the game acknowledges that I have done something specific, that's a reward. Like I feel rewarded for my action by that. So this is obviously a very short game, right? We played through once in we did it in like 30 minutes and I talked for half of that. So it's an extremely short game, but it's an extremely dense game. There's an enormous amount of possibility, and
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Not only is there an enormous amount of possibility, but there's also an enormous amount of intelligence around recognizing how players interact with that possibility. So it is much denser in terms of its ability to recognize what you're doing and respond to that than almost any other game is. I'm gonna escape. This feels like a juicy opportunity.
Written on it. The truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
This is a wonderfully never-ending hallway.
Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Yep, here we go.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever.
So I just want to sort of note that that was clearly like marked as an important, content-rich place for me to branch the story. You know, to sort of go all the way to the end, and then there's this passageway marked escape. And so when I walk down that passage and he says, you know, at the end of the passage is your violent death, and there's no other reaction, I'm anticipating I'm going to get something for this. I'm going to be rewarded narratively for doing this. The game is not going to just end when I get to the end of the passageway, because it's been set up, because it's been so clearly cued as this is not a minor ending. This is not like a branch that we're going to let you go down and recognize that you went down and then clip it off. I mean, I don't know how long this is going to be, but already there's a whole new area. There's new models. There's new animations. There's considerable new narration that is not just it's like there's some thought put into it. He's going to give me now some sort of like philosophical question. He's going to pose something interesting to me. And that's the reward that I get for going down this path.
Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. So he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Okay, so the original game did some things like this, but it did not ever do this. There was no second narrator in the original game. I'm not 100% sure what just happened. The narrative as it was being told was very clear, and it stopped in its tracks. And now different things are happening. We have a new narrator. The new narrator seems to be continuing the old story despite the fact that it's obviously no longer true. And the old narrator never did that. The old narrator always reacted sort of plausibly to the events as they unfolded.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish?
So, this is fantastic. This is my third playthrough of the game. This is really well paced, and I assume really well play tested. Because after 3 or 4 plays through the game, I'm not only sort of interacting with the systems that have already been set up, but now I'm sort of interacting with an entire brand new level of narrative system. And that is this second narrator who is opposed to, at odds with the first narrator. And I'm super intrigued by this, right? Like this has renewed my engagement with the narrative of the game.
When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Button sounds. A selection of the sounds used throughout the game when buttons are pressed. Each sound is a mix of a keyboard stroke and a synthesized tone. Kind of like 3 and 4, I think. Credits. Robin Arnott did the sound design. I didn't know that. So this is a room that is glorifying the breaking of the fourth wall. This is a room that is, I mean, it's set up literally as a museum for the game that we are playing. And we can see, look at this office layout. This is fantastic. We can see that the office is indeed like a single long corridor up until we get to the first choice of the 2 doors. And it's memorialized here. It's commemorated. That's super cool. These are some doors. I can't open them, but I can go out this way. Look at all of this memorabilia from the game, from like the office that exists within the world of the game. The sort of text in the iconic font. These are screenshots of the Stanley Parable. The point of the Stanley Parable HD remix is to win. The point is to lose. More endings, fewer endings, more narrators, fewer narrators, more Stanley, less Stanley. Clearly, this is Davey having fun with the whole concept of this game as a game. Narrator emails. After the second trailer we sent out, we asked people to email the narrator for questions. While we had initially planned to use these in further promotional materials, we never found the perfect use for them. Here are a selection of those emails. And this is fantastic. So it's not just a museum of the game as a game from within the game. It's a museum of the game as a developed object, as a piece of media that was created. So it's reframing the world that we are in again and again and again. This is extremely reflective of that sort of inception moment in the title screen. The world that we're in is an office building with this sort of narrative of this guy is all alone and he doesn't know why. And then that's sort of framed out into its inside. It's a game that we are playing that reacts to us, that is sort of conscious of the choices that we make within the game. And then that's framed as not only sort of that game, but also a game that is aware of its existence as a game, as an object, that is a museum to itself as a game, and then to its own development as a game, and the existence that it has in the real world.
To destroy one another, how they wish to control one another, how they both wish to be free. Can you see? Can you see how much they need one another? No, perhaps not. Sometimes these things cannot be seen. But listen to me. You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let time... That's
fantastic. This is one of the key tensions that I think Davey is trying to get to with this game, is the idea of games as, especially narratively focused games, as finite. There's a limited amount of authored content in a narrative game, and so any choices that you make are illusory. They're not real choices because somebody has designed the outcomes of each of those choices. The best that a game can do, as posited by the Stanley Parable, is give you the illusion of choice. The only real choice that you have as a player is the choice to play the game or not, because that's a choice that hasn't been designed, that hasn't been sort of pre-programmed for you. I think that the Stanley Parable exists in a really interesting relationship with a lot of sort of procedurally generated games that are becoming popular, that have gotten popular in the last few years. Games like Minecraft, or roguelikes like Eldritch or Don't Starve, or a lot of survival games. This is a common thing where there's definitely a narrative to the game, but the narrative is emergent. And because of that, the narrative is not strong in the same way that an authored narrative is. I mean, you can sort of really, you can tell the difference between a procedurally generated narrative and an authored narrative. But nonetheless, there is sort of an alternative. There is a way to develop a game that, you know, I might argue with Davey feels more alive than the kind of sort of limited branching choices that he is describing and sort of focused on in the Stanley Parable. Okay, I'm going to take a 2-minute break, and we're going to come back and we're going to play around a little bit more and see what other fun we can have with the Stanley Parable. All right, see you in a minute.